Hey everyone! ChatGP Taylor aka Taylor here. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we will be continuing the What If series, where I go over some hypothetical scenarios from Disventure Camp that could have taken place if one critical event was changed. Last time, we took a look at what would have happened if Rhea didn't find the team swapper advantage in episode 4 of season 2. Today's video will look at something different. If there are any specific what if scenarios that you would like to see me play out in the future, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And with that, let's get started. Before I begin, make sure to like and subscribe if this video is to your liking, and make sure to comment down below if there's anything that you would like to see going forward. The topic for today's video is something that I've had in my video idea spreadsheet for a while, and to be honest, I can't remember if someone suggested this or not. I'm really sorry if someone did and I just don't remember. But here it is. The idea for today's video is, what if there was no joint elimination ceremony in episode 9 of season 3? As a refresher, in episode 9 of season 3, Kristal revealed that only one team would win immunity, while the remaining two teams would attend the same elimination ceremony and vote to eliminate one camper among their two teams. This twist led to the cyan and yellow teams attending the same ceremony, and as a result, Gabby flipped to the Villains Alliance, sending Tess home by a vote of 5-3. We know what happened next. The Villains Alliance took control to eliminate Ashley and Tom, then suffered two setbacks through the eliminations of Yul and Gabby, with Gret betraying Alec shortly after, and Rhea went on to win the season. But what would have happened if the episode 9 elimination ceremony was just a regular one? Well, let's find out. First of all, since only one team will go to an elimination ceremony in this episode, we need to decide whether the yellow or cyan team will win immunity. But in order to do that, we need to decide the matchups for the next round. So far, the following matchups have been as follows, with the winners of each matchup highlighted in green. Based on these matchups, it seems like there's an unspoken rule where everyone on the team must go once before people can start going twice. And as such, since no team sent the same person in rounds 5 and 6, I'll assume that all campers must go twice before anyone can go 3 times. By this rule, the yellow team must send either Alec or Yul, while the cyan team must send either Aiden or Tess. Based on their performances from their first rounds, I'm assuming that the yellow team chooses Alec, since he actually got close to scoring in his round. And on the other side, since neither Aiden nor Tess got close to scoring, I'm going to say that Aiden gets picked, because I could see him making the argument that he only lost his first round because Jake slowed him down, which wouldn't happen in this next round. So if the matchup is Alec versus Aiden, I'm going to say that Alec probably wins, because we've at least seen that he can get the ball close to the net, so the odds of him scoring are higher than it is for Aiden. Thus, Alec scores the yellow team their third point, and since 3 points are all that's needed to win immunity, this makes the yellow team the second team to win immunity, sending the cyan team to the elimination ceremony. But who gets voted out? Well, here's what I think. I think Gabby launches a campaign against Tess, since Gabby targeted Tess in the canonical episode 9, and I don't think anyone will be able to change her mind since this is an emotional decision for Gabby. As for Tess, I don't think it really matters who she votes for, since Aiden and Tom will be the swing votes in this spot, so I'll just say that she votes for Gabby, after hearing that Gabby is voting for her. This leaves Aiden and Tom in the middle. Now, the obvious answer is that they vote against Gabby so that they won't have to face the backlash for voting out Ellie in the previous episode. However, we need to build suspense for this episode. And since in the canonical episode 10, Gabby lied about having an immunity totem to scare Aiden and Tom, I could see Gabby lying about having a totem in this scenario, hoping that Aiden and Tom would vote for Tess out of fear of Gabby playing a totem, nullifying their votes, and sending one of them home. The question is, would Aiden and Tom believe Gabby's lie? I took some time to think about this, and I'm inclined to say no. And this is mainly because when Aiden and Tom voted for Gabby in the canonical episode 12, they never brought up Gabby's claim that she had a totem. So I think it's safe to assume that even though they were a bit scared, they didn't really believe it. So, Tom and Aiden end up voting against Gabby, sending her out by a vote of 3-1. Sorry Gabby, but before you go, please say hi to Ellie for me. I know you'll do it. With Gabby gone, this makes the merge pretty interesting. Not only does Gabby's absence leave the villains in the 6-4 minority, this also leaves them without the intel that Gabby gave them in canon, which was that Aiden and Tom had issues with Jake. That being said, I do think that the Villains Alliance would eventually come around to manipulating Jake against his alliance, since Alec did successfully manipulate Jake into believing that Aiden and Tom were close back in episode 2. With that set aside, not many of the canon pre-challenge events change. The only one that I think really changes is that Tess and Ali have a conversation where Ali assures Tess that she's okay, while insisting that they stick with Ashley as an ally, which I think Tess would agree to. Now for the challenge. Since Tess would probably want to stick with Ali, Tess is probably nearby when Ali gets shot by Rhea and Ali. And even though Ashley and Jake ran off, because Tess is so much closer to Ally than Ashley and Jake are, I can imagine Tess not wanting to abandon Ally, and thus, she would try her best to grab Ally and pull her to safety. This would leave Tess exposed, allowing Rhea and Alec to shoot her, eliminating her from the challenge as well. Meanwhile, with Gabby gone, Yul and Gret are left as a duo, and considering how rocky their relationship is, I'm willing to bet that Yul still says something offensive, which causes him and Gret to have an argument, which allows Tom to shoot Yul, before baiting Gret into following him, where Aiden shoots her, just like in canon. The rest of the challenge should play out like in canon, with Tom shooting Ashley and Rhea, Aiden shooting Jake, Jake shooting Aiden, and Alec shooting Tom, resulting in Alec winning immunity. But who gets voted out? Well, with the brewing feud between Jake and Aiden, and because of Jake's stubbornness, I think Jake launches a campaign to take out Aiden, just like in canon. To do this, Jake would enlist the help of the villains, just like he said he would in canon. However, unlike in canon, I think the villains would actually listen to Jake and vote for Aiden with him. I know that in canon, the villains didn't follow Jake and actually voted for Ashley. However, they only did that because they knew that by turning Jake and Aiden against each other, the villains would be guaranteed a majority. But in this scenario, because the villains' alliance only has 4 members, the only way for them to get a majority is if the heroes' coalition splits their votes 3-3. And since this coalition is composed of 3 duos, there's no realistic way for the villains to manipulate them into splitting their votes 3-3. So for this round, they have to side with Jake in order to have a chance at staying safe. On the flip side, Aiden pushes for Jake to get voted out, just like he did in canon. Tom and Ally join him, just like in canon, and Tess probably follows Ally's lead. This leaves Ashley as the swing vote. And since I can't imagine her voting for Jake, I think she has to vote for Aiden in order to protect Jake. This results in a 6-4 vote that sends Aiden home. It's sad, but it might be for the best, since Aiden was just sort of roped into this pseudo-love triangle drama with Jake and Tom. At least now people won't be complaining that he stuck around too long without his own plot. For episode 11, we'll have to switch up the pairings since Gabby and Aiden were eliminated instead of Tess and Ashley. Some pairings will remain the same. Alec and Fiore should stay together, Rhea and Connor should stay together, and Yul and James should stay together. All of the canon interactions with these pairings still take place, and since all 3 pairings managed to secure 3 of the 4 working motorcycles that Alec and Fiore didn't sabotage in canon, they probably do the same in this timeline. But now let's look at the new pairings. First, we have Gret and Gabby. The main focus for their interactions is for Gabby to start interacting with Gret and helping her realize that she shouldn't have to put up with Yul's sexist and fatphobic antics, essentially taking the place of the conversation that they would have had from the canonical episode 12. The next pairing is Ally and Hunter. And much like in canon, their interactions focus on the viewer's perception of Ally, as well as them agreeing to go on vacation with Tess afterwards. Speaking of Tess, she's paired up with Lake. The reason why I want them paired up is because I want their interaction to set the tone for how Tess is going to play for the remainder of the season. Specifically, Lake would tell Tess that while she should try and repair the breach between Jake and Ally, she should also be wary of when something is beyond repair. The key moment here is that Lake wants Tess to realize that some things are just not capable of being repaired, and that she shouldn't have to sacrifice her own game just to fix something else. Perhaps Lake reminds Tess of how even though she wanted to keep the all-girls alliance together, once Ellie turned against her, she had to turn against Ellie in order to save herself. This is kind of a parallel to the storyline I gave Tess in my Season 3 rewrite video for her, where I slowly had Tess realize that even though people didn't give up on her, she shouldn't have to set herself on fire to keep others warm. And thus, Tess will continue the rest of the season reminding herself that even though she should try and bring the heroes together, she can't fully commit to it if it will destroy her own game. Moving on, our next pair is Aiden and Tom. There's not much to say other than Aiden voices his hatred of Jake, while Tom voices his regret over how he's handled his interactions with Jake, especially with how he lied about having a boyfriend to avoid talking to Jake. By this point, Tom knows that his lies could have been part of the reason why Jake didn't vote with him at the last ceremony. So the key thing here is that Tom leaves the conversation wondering how he's impacted Jake and what he can do to salvage their relationship. And speaking of Jake, I'm pairing him with Miriam. This is really the only available pairing where Jake won't end up arguing with his partner the whole time. In this interaction, Miriam reminds Jake of why he came back, and that the villains used him for his vote. That being said, I think Jake would insist that he made the right move at the last ceremony and that Miriam shouldn't worry about him. Even though Miriam is probably the one person outside of Ashley that Jake would listen to, Jake canonically didn't change his mindset until he faced a major consequence of his actions, which in canon, was Ashley's elimination. But since Jake hasn't faced a major consequence yet, and has actually faced success because of his actions, I don't think there's a reason for Jake to change. So for now, I'm going to say that Jake stubbornly keeps his mindset. The final pairing for this challenge is a bit important, and it's Ashley and Ellie. I wanted them to be a pairing because in episode 1 of this season, Ashley assured Ellie that all the bad stuff that Ellie said about her in the interviews was, as she claimed, water under the bridge. So, I held out hope that the two of them would be able to have a meaningful interaction during the season. And with this new timeline, this is the perfect time for them to talk. In this interaction, Ellie would try to make Ashley realize how unreasonable Jake is being. While Ellie would acknowledge that Ashley and Jake are great friends and that she wants to help him get better, Ellie would point out that what Ashley has done so far has not worked, that Jake has always ended up regressing, and that Jake might ruin Ashley's chances of winning. Perhaps Ellie would bring up how she would be devastated if Jake ruined her chances of securing a better life for herself. As a result, this would get Ashley to start thinking about her family and how she came back to win money to fix her family's farm, and that she can't let Jake take this opportunity from her. And now that the story-based parts are out of the way, let's get back to the challenge. As I said earlier, Alec and Fiore, Yul and James, as well as Rhea and Connor took 3 of the 4 working motorcycles to the cliffside, where they will begin the second part of the challenge. As for the 4th pairing, I'm going to say that it will be Ashley and Ellie, since Ashley canonically was a part of the 4th pairing that made it to the cliffside, and I doubt that Ellie would slow her down enough to not make it to the last motorcycle in time. Within this pairing, I think Ashley still takes her spot at the pulley, since that's where she was in canon, causing Ellie to be the one in the harness. This arrangement is extremely important. Because now that Ashley is at the pulley, once Fiore retrieves her and Alec's wrench to repair their glider, Ashley will still be within range to use her lasso and stop Fiore and Alec from gliding down to the finish line, just like in canon. Therefore, the episode should still end the same as in canon, with Rhea and Connor crossing the finish line first, meaning that Connor still returns to the game. For episode 12, let's start with the pre-merge interactions. Since Gabby is gone, the scene between her, Gret, and Yul will have to change. I think the simplest way to do it is for Gret to internally consider what Gabby told her in the previous episode, followed by Yul demanding that Gret get him a Greek balsamic salad, just like in canon. But in a change from canon, I actually want Alec to come in and try to console Gret. Although Gret probably isn't as comfortable talking to Alec as she would with Gabby, I think Gret would appreciate that someone is at least trying to check on her. While Gret would admit that she should break up with Yul, she would also admit that she's afraid of ending up alone. This is when Alec would share his story of his divorce with his wife, and how although he regrets how it ended, he realized that it's because he loved her. Alec would then ask Gret whether she's with Yul out of love or out of fear, because if there's no love, then there's nothing to regret if the relationship ends. Now, you might be thinking that, this is unrealistic, Alec would never be this vulnerable. Well, I feel like Alec's backstory could allow him to give some decent advice and add depth so he's more than just a villain. So in this universe, I'll have him be a little more open about his mistakes with his personal life, which honestly, is probably a better plot than having him be in a love triangle with Connor and Rhea, let's be real. Following this, we'll get 2 new interactions. The first of which is an interaction between Ali and Tess, where Ali voices her frustration that not only did Jake make an emotional decision, but Ashley also voted with him, making Ali question where Ashley's loyalty lies. Tess would acknowledge Ali's concerns, but insist that there's still hope for them to survive, and that they need to talk to Ashley about their next moves. Meanwhile, Jake and Ashley would also have a conversation where they talk about the previous ceremony. While Jake would be elated that he successfully eliminated Aiden, Ashley would remind Jake that they can't side with the villains forever, and that they need to try and make amends with the remaining heroes. Jake would find this suggestion ridiculous, claiming that people like Aiden and Ali have treated him worse than people like Rhea and Yul, especially since Aiden and Ali voted for him at the last ceremony. Jake would also state that since they succeeded in eliminating Aiden by siding with the villains, they should stick with them to take out Ali. While Ashley would point out that the villains will eventually dump the 2 of them when they have the majority, Jake would claim that she can't know that for sure, since at least the villains haven't voted for him. This would increase Ashley's frustration with Jake, since she knows that he's actively making moves that are hurting her game. And finally, Connor's pre-challenge interaction with Tom still takes place, where Tom admits that he still doesn't think that Jake is a bad person, while Connor expresses hope that he can help pull the heroes together into a majority. And as for Connor's canon interaction with Jake, I'm actually going to scrap it, mainly to save time due to the inclusion of the 2 new scenes I mentioned earlier. But don't worry, the topic of discussion in this conversation will be brought up later. Now we get to the challenge. Since Tess and Ashley are here instead of Gabby and Aiden, the main question to ask is how Tess and Ashley could impact the final result of the challenge. Well, I don't think Ashley impacts the challenge at all. Assuming Ashley takes Aiden's spot in the challenge and ends up with Jake, since Jake and Aiden canonically never got close to the flag, Ashley's presence shouldn't impact the results of the challenge. As for Tess, I'm assuming that she sticks with Ali, which means that she'll be present when Rhea talks to Ali about taking out Jake. And although Tess would probably be wary of Rhea's manipulative tactics, I don't think she would outright stop Rhea from giving Ali the flag, since having the flag would at least give Ali immunity. So, Tess's presence shouldn't change this interaction. However, since Tess is here instead of Gabby, this means that Gabby isn't here to take the flag from Ali when she's inside the cave. And judging by Ali's body language in the cave, I'm willing to assume that Ali was hoping to wait inside the cave for the remainder of the challenge. Therefore, the only way that Ali gets the flag taken from her is if someone else enters the cave. And since no one else is seen doing that in canon, and there's no reason for anyone to suddenly change courses and search inside the cave, I'm willing to assume that no one else ends up looking in the cave, meaning that Ali is still holding the flag by the end of the challenge, meaning that Ali wins immunity. But who gets voted out? Well, with Ali immune, the Villains Alliance sort of loses their leverage with Jake, since now they can secure his vote by promising to vote for Ali. Therefore, the only way that I could see this working out for the villains is that they all vote for Jake, and hope that Rhea's connection with Ali prompts her and Tess to flip and join their side. Meanwhile, Connor holds his canonical speech where he rallies the heroes together. Since the heroes canonically targeted the biggest non-immune threat in the Villains Alliance, I think Connor tries to rally the heroes against Alec, since he's the de facto leader of the Villains Alliance. Ashley and Tom would agree without hesitation and also vote for Alec. Jake would be visibly upset that he couldn't take out Ali and that he has to work with the same people that voted for him at the last ceremony, but since he doesn't really have any animosity towards any of the other heroes, I think he will realize that he has no choice and also votes for Alec. This leaves Tess and Ali as the swing votes. And I actually think they have different thoughts on what to do. Tess would advocate sticking with the heroes and voting for Alec, while Ali would want to make a big move and finally take out Jake. This is a dicey situation, but here's how I think it plays out. I think Tess sticks to her guns and votes for Alec, not wanting to betray the heroes. However, because Ali made such a big statement in episode 10 about how actions speak louder than words, I'm willing to believe that Ali still keeps that mindset in this episode. And since Jake hasn't made any clear indication that he's changed, and because Rhea made a clear action in Ali's favor by essentially giving her immunity, I think Ali is more willing to trust Rhea than Jake. Therefore, I think Ali breaks from her alliance and votes for Jake, forcing a 5-5 tie between Jake and Ali. We know that the tiebreaker is the prison break duel, and because Alec canonically gave Gabby advice that allowed her to win the challenge, I think Alec just uses that advice for himself and wins the duel, eliminating Jake. Therefore, Jake is sent home in a fury, having gotten his comeuppance for being so stubborn. This episode will feature some new pre-challenge interactions, so let's just get into it. First of all, since Ali won immunity in the last episode, she gets to pick someone to have dinner with in this episode. And although she's closest with Tess, I think Ali picks Rhea, since she would probably want to know more about how her and Rhea could work together going forward. In this exchange, I think Rhea would pitch the idea of eliminating Connor, Tom, and Ashley next, followed by Yul and Gret, allowing the two of them, Tess and Alec, to advance to the final four. I think Ali would agree to this idea, but in their respective confessionals, Ali would admit that she doesn't want to turn her back on Ashley at the moment, while Rhea would admit that she would rather get rid of Tess earlier so that she can have Ali's full loyalty. But an important change that I want to mention is that because Alec didn't win and take Rhea to dinner with him, the two of them don't end up pouring out their souls to each other and kissing, meaning that the love triangle plotline between them and Connor doesn't happen. And since this doesn't happen, and because Aiden is gone, the heroes can't use this as leverage in the future. And no, I'm not going to make Rhea and Ali kiss each other. Ali is with Hunter, end of story. Meanwhile, the scene where the heroes are calmly sitting on logs is replaced by a scene with Connor, Ashley, Tom, and Tess talking about the last ceremony and how Ali flipped on them. While most of them would be concerned, Tess would assure the group that she can get Ali back with them, speculating that she only flipped to take out Jake. Additionally, Ashley would get a confessional of her own, where she would vent her regrets about not being able to save Jake, while also acknowledging that she needs to focus on her own game. Other than that, the only other pre-challenge interaction that I want to mention is the interaction between Gret and Yul. This exchange should stay largely the same, with Gret trying to break up with Yul, and Yul proceeding to manipulate Gret into staying with him. Not much else to add here. Now we get to the challenge. Since Ashley, Tess, and Tom are here instead of Aiden, Gabby, and Jake, we need to choose some superpowers for the former three campers. I'm going to pick new powers for each of them because canonically, the campers were asked which powers they wanted, so I think it makes more sense to pick powers that suit them. For Ashley, I'm going to give her a supersonic voice. I originally thought about giving her an animal-based power, but Gabby already had shape-shifting powers, and since I can't recall seeing any animals on the island, having the ability to talk to animals probably wouldn't help. So, I figured that having Ashley have a supersonic voice and just shouting "Yeehaw" to knock people off their feet would be entertaining. For Tess, I'm going to give her the ability to generate force fields. I chose this power because Tess probably wouldn't want to hurt people, and she's generally seen as a support character, so I wanted to pick a power that was defensive and would also allow her to support others. And for Tom, I'm giving him the power of superior intellect. Not only is this ironic considering his himbo nature, but it's also realistic for Tom to pick this, since Tom probably wouldn't realize having this power doesn't really grant him any attacking traits. Anyways, back to the challenge. According to the canon episodes, the campers start off separated as follows: Alec and Rhea are together, Yul and Gret are together, Ali and Connor are together, and Ashley, Tess and Tom start separated, but two of them will eventually meet up, while one of them appears during the battle between Yul and Gret and Ali and Connor. For the sake of the story, let's say it's Ashley and Tess that end up meeting each other, effectively taking the canon positions of Aiden and Jake, while Tom joins during the later battle. Let's start with Ashley and Tess. In their interaction, Ashley expresses concern over Ali's motivations as well as her own positioning now that Jake is gone. Tess would assure Ashley that Ali is loyal to them, although Ashley would note that Ali's actions remind her of Jake, and that it's worrying her that Ali is going down the same path that she couldn't stop Jake from following. However, Tess would assure Ashley that she did her best with Jake, and that her efforts to help people weren't in vain. Perhaps Tess would bring up how much Ali talked about how talking with Ashley got her through the pain of losing Hunter, which would renew Ashley's hope in her own abilities. Next, let's talk about Connor and Ali. In canon, the two of them had a brief conversation regarding Connor's hesitation to use his powers. I still think this conversation can take place, but I think we could parlay this into a conversation about Ali's allegiance. After Ali asks Connor about what his friends at work would think of him worrying about a stupid video game, Connor would ask Ali about what her fans would think of her working with the villains. That's when Ali would tell Connor about how unreasonable Jake has been, and that now that he's gone, she'll stick with the heroes. This would lead into a confessional where Connor comments on how all these younger people think differently from him, and how it's starting to make him wonder whether or not he'll actually be able to succeed when surrounded by all these young people, especially since his big plan for the last ceremony completely failed. Following this, we have the battle where Ashley and Tess face off against Alec and Rhea. Honestly, I think Alec and Rhea still lose. With Tess having force field powers, she should be able to hold back Rhea's fire powers, and Ashley's supersonic scream would probably be able to knock out both Rhea and Alec, especially since Alec doesn't have powers. So, this rules out Alec and Rhea from winning immunity. Next, let's go to the battle between the pairs of Ali and Connor and Yul and Gret. Now, Ali seemed to get knocked out towards the end of the battle, while Connor temporarily stunned Yul. Which, assuming that Tom takes Gabby's place in the challenge, means that Tom shows up near the end to help Connor take on Gret and Yul. And honestly, I don't see how Tom and Connor win this battle. Even if Tom comes up with an overly elaborate plan thanks to his superior intellect, the time that it would take for him to come up with a plan and also explain it to Connor would probably be long enough for Yul to call him a nerd and take out both Tom and Connor. Therefore, the final battle on the volcano against Ned will be fought by Ashley, Tess, Yul, and Gret. A big difference from the original timeline is that Gabby isn't here, so there's no reason for Yul to blow up and treat Gret and Gabby horribly in this scenario. Therefore, I'm going to focus solely on the fight. I think it starts out similarly, with Yul trying to electrocute Ned, failing, and then Gret coming to his aid by spraying Ned with water. Now canonically, this was around the time when the volcano started to collapse under Ned's weight. And since Aiden and Jake were able to quickly notice that the volcano was collapsing, I'm willing to bet that Ashley and Tess would probably pick up on that too. And with both of them now under the mindset that they need to take the game into their own hands, thanks to Lake's conversation with Tess as well as Jake's elimination, Tess and Ashley immediately step in to try and end the battle. The way I see it, I think Ashley would just reposition herself and use her supersonic voice to knock Ned off the platform. Either he falls off the side and dies after hitting the ground, just like in canon, or he falls into the volcano and burns to death, meaning that he's defeated either way. And since Kristal said before the battle that whoever is alive after Ned is defeated will win immunity, all four of Ashley, Tess, Yul, and Gret end up receiving immunity. But who gets voted out? Well, since both Yul and Gret have immunity, I think the Heroes Coalition, with the exception of Ali, puts all their votes on either Alec or Rhea. And since they all voted for Alec at the last ceremony, I think it's safe to have them vote for Alec on this one. Meanwhile, the Villains Alliance probably vote for Connor, since Alec and Rhea did vote for him in the canon episode 13, and I doubt that Yul would have any reservations about voting out Connor either. This leaves Ali as the swing vote. And although she pledges her loyalty to both groups, Ali is extremely unsure of what she wants to do, as she's torn between Rhea's seemingly clear loyalty to her and her desire to keep the loyalty of her original allies. I actually think that Ali could genuinely go either way, so I'm going to pick the option that I think makes the better story. Ultimately, I think Ali votes with the villains to take out Connor. I'll explain why this makes sense later on, but for the time being, I think Ali would justify this move by saying that getting rid of Connor would prove to Rhea that she's willing to work with her, and that while she could probably get Tess and Ashley's loyalty back since they're so kind, it wouldn't be easy for her to get Rhea's loyalty back if she turned her back on her now. So, Ali cast the deciding vote against Connor, sending him home with the realization that it's hard to do something when the people you're relying on don't think the same way that you do. Now, the main pre-challenge interaction in canon was Jake and Aiden exposing Alec and Rhea's kiss to the audience. But since both Jake and Aiden are gone, and because Alec and Rhea never kissed in this timeline, we need to come up with some new interactions that could realistically happen. So here's what I've got. This episode starts off with a conversation between Ali and Rhea, which did take place in the canon episode. Their conversation would be similar to the one in canon, in which Ali admits to Rhea that she never really felt like she belonged with the heroes, and Rhea would tell Ali that she should be herself. Obviously Rhea only cares about making sure that Ali doesn't deviate from her, but Ali takes this advice to heart and it gives Ali the false confidence in her ability to make moves that are best for herself. Meanwhile, since Jake and Aiden are gone, I'll replace their scene with a scene involving Tess and Ashley. Tess would feel upset that Ali didn't stay true to the Heroes Coalition, but Ashley would assure Tess that it's not her fault, and that sometimes people do things against better judgment. Perhaps Ashley would relate Tess's situation to how Jake did absurd things despite her trying to logically explain why it wasn't ideal for him to do those things. This similarity in their predicament would bring Ashley and Tess closer together, as well as help them realize that while they should try and be supportive to others, they shouldn't let it compromise their own games. Following this, we'll have another scene with Yul and Gret, where Yul once again treats Gret horribly. This scene would cause Yul and Gret to get separated into two different discussions. Firstly, Alec will approach Yul and scold him for treating Gret so horribly. Yul would probably come up with some ridiculous reason to defend his actions, probably by saying that he needs to remind Gret who's in charge. Alec would then try to relate to Yul by talking about his own failed relationship, how he regrets not being able to fix things, and that if Yul doesn't stop treating Gret horribly, she'll leave, and Yul will regret his actions for the rest of his life. Of course, Yul doesn't believe any of this, and he'll probably call Alec a wimp for dwelling on his failed relationship. Yeah, he'd probably use cruder language, but to keep this video somewhat family-friendly, I'll censor Yul for him. And finally, when Gret is left alone and crying after facing Yul's abuse, Tom comes by and offers some words of comfort and advice. Now, there are 3 reasons why this interaction is taking place. 1. Since Jake is gone, Tom needs to have some plot relevance, so I'm having him take Gabby's place as Gret's support system. 2. Since Tom probably recognizes by now that Jake went through some pain while he ignored him, Tom would probably want to make sure that he's not ignoring other people's pain, which would make him more attentive and recognize that Gret is struggling. And 3. This allows Gret's story to move forward. While Gret might be a bit hesitant to listen to Tom considering that the two of them have never really been on the same side, once Tom expresses his regret over how he ignored Jake, Gret will once again realize that Yul wouldn't be treating her like this if he truly loved her. Now let's get to the challenge. Since literally one camper from each pairing is gone, we'll need to remake the pairings. I think for now, we'll go with Rhea and Ali as a pairing, since I think the two of them could be a semi-villainous duo together. I also think Yul and Gret should be paired together, since the pairing would probably quickly devolve into chaos with Yul criticizing every move that Gret makes. I'll also have Tess and Ashley together, and they'll probably be the wholesome duo of the bunch. This leaves Alec and Tom as the final pairing, and while they may not be the most exciting duo, they'll play a role in this challenge. So how does this challenge play out? Well, I think Ali and Rhea will probably do the best, mostly because Ali's online presence will make her more likely to know the key TikTok dances. Now, you could make the argument that Ali's insecurity about how viewers perceive her might cause her and Rhea to slow down. I see the argument, but I also think that Rhea wouldn't put up with that kind of behavior from Ali, and considering how Rhea is forceful enough to drag Alec away from an argument, I could see her dragging Ali to the next station by force, regardless of Ali's insecurities. So, I think the two of them would be able to finish first. Even if they don't, since Ali canonically spotted the golden watch, Rhea and Ali could also get that watch and just advance straight to the finish line. So either way, they should be fine. For second place, I'm going to give it to Ashley and Tess. I don't think there's enough evidence to say that either of them would be extremely knowledgeable about TikToks, but I also think that the other two pairings would be slower than them. Alec is old, Tom is a himbo, and Yul would probably spend too much time scolding Gret for not dancing up to his standards. So, I think Ashley and Tess finished the challenge in second place. As for the remaining two duos, I think the major moment for them during the challenge is that Gret begs Yul to teach Alec and Tom one of the dances that they don't know, similar to how Aiden taught Alec and Connor the Renegade. During this time, Yul scolds Gret once again for her dancing, prompting both Alec and Tom to step up for Gret and defend her, saying that Gret is a person that deserves respect, not a punching bag. As Alec and Tom argue with Yul, Gret sees that there are people who are willing to be by her side, and that she is worth more as a person than what Yul sees in her. This group argument is key. Because once these two duos are done recording the final dance, Alec reels in a shark, just like in canon, giving him and Tom the lead that they need to get third place. This leaves Gret and Yul as the last duo. Once Yul realizes that they're in last place, he'll lash out at Gret, blaming her for slowing them down. This is when Gret snaps and finally puts Yul in his place. A lot of the points that she brings up in their canon episode 13 argument is brought up here, and Gret makes it clear that she's not going to let Yul control her anymore. And as such, she takes control of their boat and drives them back to shore. However, this argument also gives us a way to figure out who is being automatically eliminated. By this point, Yul is certainly furious that Gret stood up to him, and he's probably already plotting revenge against her. And that's when it dawns on him. Because each camper records their partner's TikToks, it's logical to think that at some point, each camper will have the phone with their partner's TikToks. Therefore, Yul is likely to have the phone with Gret's TikToks at some point. So all Yul needs to do is discreetly throw that phone into the lake while Gret is busy driving. Thus, once Yul and Gret get back to shore, Yul will reveal that he somehow lost his phone, meaning that all of Gret's TikToks are gone. And because Gret still has the phone with Yul's TikToks since she recorded them, that means that Yul automatically wins, eliminating Gret. And if you're wondering why Gret wouldn't just throw Yul's phone away after dumping him, she knows that if she's seen throwing away the phone with Yul's TikToks, Yul will immediately do the same with her TikToks. So, Gret's only real option is to get to the finish line and hope that her TikToks are judged to be better. So since Yul throws away Gret's TikToks when she's driving, she doesn't notice it before it's too late, and Gret is eliminated by default. Yul will try to taunt Gret about this, but she stands her ground, declaring that she's leaving as a stronger, self-assured individual, and that she wishes everyone except Yul good luck in the game, and asks them to beat Yul for her. Not the worst ending for someone who deserved a good ending. Let's kick off this episode with some pre-challenge interactions. To start, Rhea and Ali have yet another conversation about Ali learning to not worry about what others think of her. While Ali still has some reservations, Rhea would point out that she managed to win the last challenge once she pushed away her insecurities regarding the TikToks. This notion would further push Ali into the territory of being villainous, or at the very least not caring about what people think of her. Meanwhile, Alec would try to talk strategy with Yul. At this point, Yul is upset that Gret is gone, but it's because now he has no one that he can control. Knowing that he has to talk on Yul's level, Alec explains to Yul that he needs to find someone else to control, ideally so the villains' alliance can still hold a majority even with Gret's absence. This leads to Yul trying to manipulate Tom into joining him. But because of Tom's himbiness, this leads to a series of infuriating interactions where Tom doesn't understand what Yul is saying to him, causing Yul to exclaim in a confessional, "How the hell did this dumbass make it this far?" This adds a bit of comedy to the episode, both because of Tom's himbiness, but also because it addresses the absurdity of Tom making it this far when his main plot pretty much ended back in episode 12. However, after seeing how aggressive Yul is with him, Tom admits in a confessional that Gret must have suffered a lot by dating Yul, and it makes Tom start to reflect on how he treated Jake after ignoring him for so long. Tom then ends the confessional realizing that he needs to stop ignoring Jake and be upfront with him. And finally, we have the interactions between Tess and Ashley. By this point, I think they approach Ali and try to logically explain why she should stick with them instead of Rhea. Ali would tell them not to worry, and assures them that Rhea is just trying to make her feel better, while her true loyalty is to the two of them. As an added story element, Tess would raise concern over Rhea's villainous behavior, and would potentially bring up what Ali's viewers might think of her decision to stay close to Rhea. This would cause Ali to lash out, since she's taken Rhea's advice to not worry about what others think about her. Her lash out causes her to angrily walk away from Ashley and Tess for the time being, leaving them concerned as to where Ali's loyalty lies. And with that, we have one more thing to address before we get to the challenge. And that's the immunity totem. In canon, Gret saw where the totem was located, and directed Jake and Connor to where it was. But since the three of them aren't in this episode, we need to figure out who finds the totem. Well, since Alec, Rhea, and Ali were in this episode in canon and didn't find it, I think it's safe to say that they don't find it. And yes, I know that Rhea was too busy trying to flip Ali in canon, but even in this timeline, I feel like Rhea would still spend time ensuring that Ali was on her side, especially if she spots Ashley and Tess trying to persuade Ali to not flip. So, I feel like one of the newcomers to this episode ends up finding the totem. From these four, I feel like Tess has shown the least amount of skills that would allow her to find the totem, so she's out. For Yul, even though he did find a totem in the canon episode 19, he literally tripped over it, so I'm not convinced that he would be able to find one. And even if he did spot it in the tree, I doubt that he would want to put in the physical labor to climb the tree, so he's out too. This leaves Tom and Ashley, and even though I think they're pretty close in terms of physical ability, I'm going to say that Ashley finds it, because episode 1 of season 1 literally showed Ashley looking up into a tree to find apples, and then climbing the tree to get said apples. So, it's definitely realistic for Ashley to spot the totem, climb the tree, and grab it for herself. With that done, let's move on to the challenge. Normally I would go in depth into all the questions that could be asked, but because of how different the lineup of campers is from the canon episode, I'm just going to skip to naming the winner, mostly because of how clear it is to me. I think Yul wins this challenge handily. I previously explained this in the video about what would have happened if the Heroes Alliance kept Yul, but this challenge is perfect for Yul. In this challenge, I suspect that most of the questions that are directed towards Yul are attempts to call out his problematic behavior. The problem with this is that Yul genuinely doesn't believe that he's said or done anything wrong. So, if he answers the questions by denying that he's wrong in any way, he won't get penalized because he's technically not lying, since he genuinely believes that he's telling the truth. It doesn't matter that he's objectively a horrible person, because his delusion into thinking he's perfectly okay will prevent him from getting penalized for lying. That's why Yul wins this challenge. But who gets voted out? Well, I think Yul, Alec, and Rhea stick together to vote for Tom. Even though I think Rhea would prefer it if they targeted Ashley or Tess in order to ensure that Ali has no one to go to except the villains, Rhea also knows that Ali would be more willing to take out Tom, who she has less of an attachment to, rather than Ashley or Tess. So, the villains' alliance kind of has to capitulate to Ali's demands. Meanwhile, the remaining heroes probably put their votes on Rhea, because they probably realize how badly Rhea is affecting Ali, and thus, they would want to take out Rhea to ensure that Ali stays loyal to them. Once again, Ali is the swing vote, and considering the options that are available, I think Ali votes out Tom. Setting aside the fact that Ali is much closer to Rhea than she is to Tom, Rhea could easily convince Ali that Tess and Ashley aren't taking her wishes into account. And it makes sense. From Ali's perspective, Rhea is at least willing to keep Tess and Ashley in the game a little longer, while Tess and Ashley aren't willing to consider keeping Rhea in the game any longer. So, Tom gets voted out by a vote of 4-3. And yes, even though Ashley has an immunity totem, I think she would still have enough faith in Ali that she wouldn't need to play her totem. So sorry Tom, but you're out. But hey, at least you can finally talk to Jake and repair your bond. At this point, we're pretty much writing entirely new storylines for the season, so fair warning, I'm going to take a lot of creative liberty here. To start, we're going to have a conversation between Tess and Ashley. Both of them would express their disappointment that Ali trusts Rhea more than them, and this is where they finally put their foot down. They're done being the nice people who get taken advantage of, and that this is the sign that they need to start being more active and playing for themselves, rather than counting on other people to make the right decisions. That being said, this is where Ali and Rhea enter the scene, and Ali confidently proposes an all-girl alliance to take out Yul and Ali. Tess and Ashley are rightfully suspicious, especially considering that Ali has gone against them on 3 different votes. However, Ali would assure Tess and Ashley that this alliance will work, and that Rhea is completely on board for it. However, unbeknownst to Ali, Rhea actually isn't on board with it, and in a confessional, Rhea explains that she wants to take out either Ashley or Tess first in order to leave Ali with no choice but to stay loyal to her. And while this happens, Alec and Yul continue strategizing, with Yul admitting that he's frustrated that he hasn't been able to take control. This is when Alec corrects Yul, claiming that Yul has been in control the whole time, noting how Yul took out his biggest enemy in Connor, showed Gret that he was in charge by eliminating her, took out Tom when he refused to work with him, and even won the last immunity challenge. This would make Yul feel even more confident in himself, although Alec would eventually admit in a confessional that he's just trying to inflate Yul's ego so that he doesn't realize that Alec is the real leader, and so Yul will potentially make himself an even bigger target by bragging about his accomplishments. And with that, let's head into the challenge. Since Gret won this challenge in canon, but she's no longer here, we need to figure out a new winner from our remaining 6 competitors. To start, I really don't think that Yul is smart enough to solve the puzzle, so he's out. As for Tess, she hasn't really shown any clear skills that would make me believe that she could solve the puzzle, so she's out. For Ashley, she's definitely physical enough to collect all her puzzle bags, but much like Tess, there isn't really any reason for me to believe that she would have the skill set needed to solve puzzles, so I'll rule her out as well. And for Rhea, she canonically had to peek at Alec's puzzle in order to have any chance at winning, so I doubt that she would finish the challenge before Alec, meaning that Rhea doesn't win either. This leaves either Alec or Ali as the winner. This is a unique scenario where I feel like the winner has to be decided by ruling out who we know can't win this challenge, rather than by deciding who has the better chance to win. To explain, even though Alec is probably the smarter of the 2 remaining campers, we know from canon that he couldn't complete the puzzle before Gret, so I'm not confident in his chances despite his higher intelligence. Meanwhile, even though Ali canonically didn't even get a chance to attempt the puzzle because of Jake's interference, considering Ali's video game experience, I think it's very possible that she has experience solving puzzles. And considering that Jake is gone, Ali should have no one preventing her from reaching the station and attempting the puzzle in this timeline. Therefore, even though Alec is smarter than Ali, we've seen that Alec couldn't solve the puzzle fast enough in canon, so I'm willing to give this one to Ali. And plus, this will further push Ali into believing that playing her own game and not caring about what others think is paying off for her. But who gets voted out? Well, I think the all-girl alliance bands together and votes for Yul, noting his poor attitude. However, Ali is the only one who actually goes along with this plan, as Rhea, Alec, and Yul take this opportunity to try and blindside Ashley, hoping that they can eliminate a big physical threat from the game who is also close to Ali. Meanwhile, Ashley and Tess go to Ali and try to convince her that Rhea can't be trusted and that she's just misdirecting her vote so the villains can get one of them out, but Ali would dismiss their concerns, as by this point, she's completely convinced that Rhea has done nothing but help her, and that she's completely confident that she's making the right decision. This declaration makes Ashley and Tess realize that Ali has truly gone down the same path as Jake, and that they need to stop relying on Ali and Rhea's word, and instead take initiative to make a move that is good for their own game. As such, they cast their 2 votes against Rhea, hoping to end her control over Ali once and for all. But from this position, Ashley and Tess know that at best, it'll be a 3-way tie between Yul, Rhea, and one of the two of them, resulting in a tiebreaker that they don't know if they can win. And the worst case scenario, which is exactly what's happening, is that Rhea betrays Ali and joins Alec and Yul, her original villain allies, in voting for either Ashley or Tess, resulting in a 3-2-1 vote to send one of them home. Thus, Ashley realizes that this is the time to play her immunity, and she has to decide who the villains would likely target between her and Tess. That's where the suspense of the elimination ceremony comes from, and in the end, Ashley decides that because of her physical upside, she's more likely to be the target, and place the totem on herself. This nullifies the 3 votes cast against her, meaning that Rhea is blindsided by a vote of 2-1-0. Rhea leaves extremely frustrated that all her manipulative efforts came up short. Ali is shocked that Ashley and Tess went against their agreement, while Ashley and Tess celebrate making a big move that was objectively great for their games. This episode likely kicks off with a conversation between Ali, Tess, and Ashley, where Ali is left frustrated that Tess and Ashley didn't vote for Yul with her. While Tess and Ashley would point out that Rhea lied to Ali and tried to vote out Ashley, Ali would counter by saying that if they stuck to the plan, Yul would be gone and they could have confronted Rhea about it and still work together to take out Alec. This would lead Ali to having a minor spiral, where she wonders how this failed move will cause the viewers to perceive her, especially now that Rhea isn't here to pull Ali back into being confident. Having been mildly aggravated by Ali at this point, Tess would ask Ali why she cares so much about what the viewers think, to which Ali would comment that she tried to ignore it, but the viewers are her whole life, and that her career will be over if she doesn't think about them. Ashley would outright tell Ali that she shouldn't care about what people behind the screen tell her, leading Ali to retort that no one liked her after her poor performance in Season 2. This one line would cause Tess to speak up and correct Ali, noting that she liked her, Hunter liked her, and Ashley liked her. Even after the public soured on her, the people who cared the most about her were still there for her and were ready to comfort her. This reply from Tess is what drives home a key realization for Ali. As Ashley pulls Tess away to calm down, Ali realizes that by trying to prove to all her haters that she's capable of playing the game, she's been pushing away the people whose opinions actually matter, such as Hunter, Tess, and Ashley. This is what causes Ali to experience immense regret for how she's treated the people who genuinely care about her. Meanwhile, Yul and Alec talk about the previous ceremony, where Yul vents about how Ali voted for him. While Alec would try and calm him down, knowing that he needs Ali's vote to have a majority, Yul would insist that this is a sign that he's losing control of the game, and that he needs to take out Ali in order to re-establish control. This causes Alec to admit in a confessional that his villain's alliance is quickly falling apart, and that at this point, considering that the finale is so close, he needs to focus on self-preservation and doing whatever he can to survive. This leads into the part of the episode where the remaining campers get letters from home, and this is where we'll see what everyone's mindset is for the rest of the season. For Ashley, her letter is probably from her family, where they talk about how they're trying their best to keep the farm going while she's gone. This is key because it reminds Ashley of why she's trying so hard to win, and that she really needs the money in order to help her family recover from the fire accident that she caused. Meanwhile, Tess gets a letter from her university friends, who encourage her to keep being a good person and to never forget to do what's best for her, which Tess will take to heart. However, Ali's letter is much less positive, as it's from her mother who doesn't approve of her job or of Hunter. This adds even more stress to Ali's already existing problems. Meanwhile, Yul gets a letter from his manager, who warns him that the fans are not happy with him, which Yul brushes off, declaring that once he regains control of the game, those fans will come crawling back to him. And finally, Alec gets a letter from his ex-wife, who tells Alec that it's amazing how much more of an effort he put into succeeding in the game compared to their own marriage. This letter will make Alec realize that he needs to delegate his efforts into the right areas, further pushing him into the mindset that he needs to think for himself, and not necessarily his allies. And now, we head into the challenge. I'm not going to waste too much time here, because it's pretty obvious that Ashley will win. She's ridden horses before and we've seen firsthand that she's more than capable of doing it effectively, so the only way that she doesn't win is if someone sabotages her, which I don't think will happen, especially since Yul will probably be too preoccupied with sabotaging Ali in order to ensure that she doesn't win immunity. Therefore, Ashley crosses the finish line first and wins immunity. But who gets voted out? Well, Yul definitely votes for Ali, as this stays consistent with his mindset that he absolutely needs to remain in control. Alec probably sticks with Yul, since he's his only ally left. Meanwhile, Ali votes for Yul in response to him targeting her, and she pleads with Ashley and Tess to join her side, acknowledging that she was wrong to blame them, and that she now realizes that being kind to the people who actually care about her is more likable than just not caring about what people think at all. While I think Ashley would join Ali because she's more likable than Yul, I actually think Tess is on the fence with this decision. Especially if Alec manages to talk to Tess and convinces her into thinking that Ali has really only acted villainous because she has the pressure of being on reality TV. And since Alec has somewhat worked with Ali for the past few episodes, his claims do have some weight to them. This is where Tess faces the biggest decision of her game. Does she side with Ali, the person who she cares deeply about? Or does she vote her out, because she believes that Ali's poor motivations are caused by being on reality TV? And the fact that Ali admitted that being kind to the people who care about her is more likable shows that she's still thinking about being liked. In the end, this might come as a shock, but I have Tess voting Ali out by a vote of 3-2. This might seem crazy, but this wouldn't be the first time that Tess voted someone out to save them from themselves.
I did this for your own good. This game isn't healthy for you.
This is a very similar situation to what Tess went through with Ellie, and now that Ali is out, Tess assures Ali that she did this for her own good, and that now that she won't have to deal with the pressure of being on TV, she can direct all her focus towards caring less about what the viewers think and caring more about what she thinks of herself, as well as how she treats the people around her. Is this a smart game decision by Tess? Not really, since she could probably have a majority with Ashley and Ali if she just votes out Yul. But Tess isn't much of a strategist anyways, so I think this move isn't too unrealistic. Ali would be a little upset, but she would accept it, having gotten her comeuppance, but she at least has a better mindset now compared to how she was before. Before we get into the actual challenge, I want to use the pre-challenge interactions to establish what everyone's mindset is heading into the home stretch. For Tess and Ashley, they'll agree to stick with each other no matter what, even though Ashley is a bit upset that Tess voted out Ali. They know that they'll probably have to force a tie against either Alec or Yul, and they'll be ready to make that decision by the time the elimination ceremony comes around. Meanwhile, Alec and Yul talk about the results of the previous ceremony and how they can move forward. Alec spends this time continuing to feed Yul's ego, claiming that since Yul has successfully shown how dominant he is by taking out his enemies, he should take every opportunity to continue showing everyone how dominant he can be, and that no one can hold a candle to his dominance anymore. While Yul sees this as a sign that Alec is completely enamored by his control, Alec admits in a confessional that he's just trying to get Yul to paint a bigger target on himself so that in the event of a tie, the other alliance will vote for Yul instead of himself, which feeds into his self-preservation strategy that he started using in the past episode. And now, let's get to the challenge. As I've said in previous videos, the result of this challenge likely comes down to how the campers divide their shocks. And honestly, I think the result of this challenge is pretty simple. Since Yul has been manipulated by Alec into thinking that he needs to continue showing his dominance in order to succeed, I think he splits his shocks towards both Tess and Ashley, hoping to show both of them that he's better than the two of them. In response, I think Tess and Ashley direct at least one shock each towards Yul, possibly even two. This fixation on Yul gives Alec the free rein to run through the maze without much trouble. And even if Tess and Ashley direct one shock each towards Alec at some point during the challenge, Alec still has shocks of his own to use against them. So I think with Yul's aggressive behavior drawing most of Ashley and Tessa's ire, Alec should be able to hold on long enough to win immunity for himself. And how does the vote play out? Well, I think Ashley and Tess easily vote for Yul, since they definitely aren't voting for each other. Meanwhile, Yul and Alec probably vote together against either Ashley or Tess. I considered the possibility of Alec dumping Yul at this point because the next challenge is the finale, but I ultimately decided that because Alec has successfully been able to manipulate Yul into make dumb decisions, I feel like Alec wouldn't mind having Yul in the finale so that he can continue manipulating him into staying out of his way. So, I think they vote together, and I think that they vote for Tess, because Tess is probably less likely to win a tiebreaker. So, the result is a 2-2 tie, meaning that Yul and Tess have to face each other in a tiebreaker. But who wins? Honestly, I don't really know. I think Yul has slightly more physical upside because of his background as a K-pop performer, while Tess is generally more level-headed and arguably smarter than Yul. I think it could go either way depending on the challenge, so in this spot, I think I have to go with what I think is better for the story. And in my opinion, I think the story is slightly better if Yul advances to the finale. And there are two reasons why I think this way. 1. Tess doesn't really have a motivation to win. She said at the start that she returned to the game to spend time with Hunter and Ali, and now that Tess has pretty much set Ali back on the path to being confident in her own self-worth, Tess doesn't really have much of a reason to stick around. Meanwhile, the other three campers all have a reason to try and win. Ashley needs the money to help her family recover from their fire accident, Alec needs the money to rebuild his life after his divorce took everything from him, while Yul needs the money to basically live after he pretty much gave up on protecting his image. So, Tess is kind of the outlier here. And secondly, Yul being in the finale allows a true villain to still be in the running, which sets up a better dynamic where Ashley is the clear rootable hero, and Yul is the clear villain set up for a probable downfall. So, Tess loses the tiebreaker, and she leaves content, knowing that she did all she could, and she had more of a plot than just being a passive support character. And before leaving, she encourages Ashley to do everything she can to win and earn the money that she probably deserves. Before we get into the challenge section of this episode, I want to focus on the story-building parts of it. There are quite a few stories to cover, with some taking less time than others. To start, Ali starts by apologizing to both Tess and Hunter for her behavior during the season, noting that she was taking their support for granted by fixating on the viewers' opinions of her. They accept her apology, and perhaps Ali and Hunter have a conversation similar to the one in the canon episode 21, allowing them to become a stronger couple. While this happens, we get a brief shot of Gabby checking in on Gret, with the latter assuring the former that she's much happier, and that she feels more confident and free than she did when she was with Yul. This is also where Gabby encourages Ellie to live in the moment and talk to Gret, which is pretty much what happened in canon. Meanwhile, Aiden, Tom, James, and Lake hang out together. Perhaps they play charades like Lake and James did in canon. But during this time, Lake brings up the idea of everyone making amends with Jake. While Tom would want to do that, both Aiden and James would be against it, knowing how volatile Jake has been. Tom would then explain his feelings regarding his failed relationship with Jake, acknowledging how he shouldn't have ignored and lied to him over the past 2 years. This scene would open the door for the potential of Jake and Tom reuniting, while also acknowledging that Jake needs to take steps to earn everyone's trust back. Speaking of Jake, we'll include a scene where he watches Tom, Aiden, James, and Lake from afar, upset that people aren't hanging out with him. This is where Miriam would check on Jake, causing Jake to vent about how James and Aiden could be so loved while he's hated. Miriam would try to give Jake a reality check and realize that he hasn't been a saint to them either, although Jake would refute this, claiming that his paranoia and moves are justified and that he deserved the right to vote them out. This is where Miriam would give up and leave, but not before telling Jake this simple statement. If you continue pushing people away and blaming the world for your own actions, you're going to end up alone. And I know from experience how painful it is to be alone. Miriam would then walk away, leaving Jake to reflect on whether or not he will end up alone. And finally, we'll cut to a scene of Connor and Rhea, where Rhea would taunt Connor about how he failed to get her out. While Connor would note that Rhea ended up getting voted out just like him, she would note that at least she was able to control the game to some degree, while Connor failed to do anything significant with his second chance. And once Rhea leaves, Miriam would approach Connor to console him. The two of them would then talk about Connor's regrets and Rhea's tormenting of him, leading to Miriam telling Connor that he needs to forget about the past and focus on the future. She could say something like, "Rhea is just getting under your skin. If you continue acknowledging her, then she's already won. You may have loved her in the past, but that's not who she is anymore. Don't let the thought of who she could have been control your life. Leave that behind you, and keep moving forward." This message would also tie into Connor's arc from the previous season, where he had to accept that he wasn't young anymore and to stop living in the past. So, this is the start of Connor realizing that he needs to stop thinking about Rhea and to start moving forward in his life. And with that, we can finally kick off this episode's challenge. To figure out who finds each totem, we need to split the campers off into groups and decide where each of these groups ends up. I'm going to have to use some creative liberty here because of how different the second half of the season was from canon, but I'll try to incorporate elements of the canon timeline. To start, let's look at the trees. For this area, I'm deciding that Connor, Miriam, Tom, and Rhea will search here. I put Tom here because he searched here in canon, and since Connor and Miriam weren't shown to be searching anywhere in canon, and since Rhea wasn't in this episode in canon, I feel like putting them here isn't too unrealistic. What I imagine for this scenario is for Miriam to figure out where they need to dig, leading to Tom and Rhea fighting each other once they get to the spot. However, seeing this as an opportunity to make a statement, Connor jumps in and holds Rhea down, and with some help from Miriam, Tom steps up and digs up the totem, becoming the first helper for the final challenge. This is important, as this scene not only allows Tom to become a helper, but it also gives Connor a scene where he finally does something consequential for the game, prevents Rhea from having a shot at winning money, while also showing Rhea that he's done letting her control him. Next, let's go to the hotel, where there's a totem on the roof. For this area, I'm going to start by having Hunter, Ali, and Tess heading here, since Hunter and Tess searched here in canon. Now, if they're planning to boost someone up to the roof, I'm assuming that Hunter and Tess agreed to boost Ali up to the roof, mostly due to Hunter needing to be at the bottom due to his strength, and the fact that Tess is still more or less being a support character. This allows Ali to reach the roof. However, she's not alone, as James, Lake, and Aiden also decide to search here, since Aiden and Lake canonically searched here as well. James and Lake then agree to boost Aiden up to the roof, just like in canon, leading to a fight between Aiden and Ali over the second totem. This is a scenario that I outlined in a previous What If video, and since Aiden is generally smaller and weaker than Jake, Ali should be able to beat Aiden and claim the second totem for herself. But what about the third totem? Well, I imagine that Gret, Gabby, and Ellie would stick together, but because they canonically spent all their time frolicking in the pool, I'm guessing that they don't find the totem. This leaves only 2 people left. And with a little creative liberty, here's what I'm thinking happens. Remember the scene where James and Yul have a deep conversation behind the hotel? Well, I'm replacing that with a scene between Jake and Fiore. Jake takes Yul's spot as the guy who's crying and thinks the world is against him, while Fiore takes James' spot and tries to use her words to snap him out of it. It might seem out of character for Fiore to help Jake, but Fiore gave Gret a bit of a therapy session back in episode 9 of season 1, so I think it's possible for this to occur. Anyways, using some harsh language, Fiore would try to get Jake to realize that he's been acting really immature towards the other campers and that it's his fault that he didn't win. She would probably say something like, I'm 8 years old and I'm at least 10 times as mature as you. You voted out James because you wanted to punish Aiden for high-fiving a guy that you weren't even dating. You got jealous of Allie just because she was friends with Ashley, as if Ashley can't have friends outside of you. And Allie voted you out because you couldn't hide how pissed off you were about her winning immunity. Face it, Jake, it's your fault that you're here. You're human, humans make mistakes, and you definitely made a few. No amount of blaming or entitlement is going to change that. In response, Jake would be frustrated that Fiore is trying to correct him. Yes, it's absolutely infuriating that it's still not clicking for Jake, but let's be real, the most stubborn people will do anything other than consider the possibility that they might be wrong. That's when Fiore would take Jake up to the balcony where Yule was in canon, allowing Jake to look at all the other campers from above. Fiore would point out how they're all searching together, while Jake is alone on the balcony. Granted, it would be in harsher words, such as, look at them. They're all searching together. The only one that's stuck in the past is you. Even the old hag that saved you from your parents isn't even on your side. Wake up, dumbass. These people have given you so much more patience than you deserve. And they're not gonna wait for you to get your head out of your ass. We all have problems, Jake. The difference is that these bozos all have a problem with you. Do you seriously think that they all have a delusional reason for hating you? Get real. Be accountable for once in your life and realize that these people are staying away from you because of what you have done to them. Now, this might be too harsh of a statement and it's probably not the healthiest thing for Jake to hear, but Fiore is definitely not the kind of person to pull her punches, and Jake's at a point where nothing else has worked, so harsh words might be the way to go. This rant from Fiore will hit Jake where it hurts, and instead of thinking about how people don't want to be near him, he'll think about why people don't want to be near him. This conversation would end with Fiore saying something like, "What are you waiting for? Go apologize to them already," followed by Fiore pushing Jake down the stairs. This results in Jake spotting the totem that you'll found in canon, allowing Jake to become the third helper in the finale. With Tom, Allie, and Jake as the winners, they each now get to pick their helper. I think Tom picks Ashley, since she's the one he was the closest to in this timeline. Allie would probably pick Alec, mostly because she at least somewhat respects his gameplay, and because Yule didn't treat her well in the previous couple of episodes. This leaves Jake with Yule. However, the key moment for Jake is when he celebrates winning the challenge, but when he turns around to see everyone's reactions, he sees how upset everyone is that he won, which will further make Jake recognize that he must have done something wrong. And before this section ends, Tom would also choose to give Yule the disadvantage due to his poor behavior, but it largely doesn't matter, since Yule and Ria were canonically able to dig up gems using the toy tools, so Yule and Jake would probably be able to do the same. And to end the episode, we need a conversation to replace the one between Hunter and Tess. And surprisingly, I want this conversation to be between Allie and Jake. Jake would be sulking alone near the pool, and Allie would walk up to him, wanting to talk. Allie would apologize to Jake for taking him out, but she would insist that Jake has a lot of people that he needs to apologize to. While Jake would want to argue with Allie, he would be too dejected to do so, as he wonders how he managed to do so many things that felt right, but were actually wrong. Allie would try to empathize with him, saying that she knows how he feels. While Jake would claim that no one knows how he feels, Allie would remind Jake that even though she blindsided him in episode 12, had she not won immunity in that episode, Jake would have done the same thing to her. This would make Jake realize that he and Allie aren't too different after all, and that they might think similarly after all, prompting Jake to hear Allie out. Allie would note that she wanted to do anything she could to not feel the pain of the viewers not liking her. But in doing so, she ended up hurting the people that didn't do anything to her. Allie would then point out that Jake did the same thing. After all, it's not James's fault that Aiden became friends with Tom, it's not Allie's fault that she became friends with Ashley, and it's not Aiden's fault that Tom ignored Jake for the past 2 years. Allie would then acknowledge that while life hasn't been the best, everything that she did to try and feel better did not actually make her life better, and that she hopes that Jake realizes this soon. This is when Jake gets his epiphany and realizes that everything he's done has actually made his life marginally worse, and wonders what he could do to get free from this. Allie would assure Jake that the first step is to acknowledge that he's wrong, which he's already doing. Drawing from her own experience, Allie would claim that once people see from Jake's actions that he's changed his mindset, people might be willing to give him another chance, emphasizing that actions speak louder than words. After all this, Jake would thank Allie for talking to him, with Jake vowing that he needs to change from here on out. Now we're at the finale. Before we get into the challenge, let's figure out who each eliminated camper wants to support. This will come in handy once we get to episode 21, but I think it's fine to do it now. In this scenario, I think Ashley gets the bulk of the supporters with 8. I think Tess picked Ashley because she had a good bond with her during the season, and Hunter would tag along with her. Aiden and Lake would probably support Ashley because she's the heroic figure in this finale, and James would probably tag along with them. For Connor, I think he supports Ashley for the same reasons, although I did consider having him support Alec. For Tom, even though he's Ashley's helper for the challenge, I think he would have supported her anyways for being a hero. And for Miriam, since she's been largely anti-villain during her time in the game, I think she would support Ashley as well. For Alec, I think he gets 6 supporters. For Ali, she's only supporting Alec since she's his helper for the challenge, otherwise she probably would have picked Ashley. For Fiore and Rhea, they had a pretty good bond with Alec while in the game, so I think they easily support him. For Gret, I think she would support Alec because he was one of the people who defended her against Yul in this timeline, and by connection, Gabby and Ellie would probably join her as well. This leaves Yul with only one supporter, which is Jake, and it's only because Jake is his helper for the challenge, otherwise he would have picked Ashley. Now let's get to the challenge. Canonically, only Ali and Jake were in this challenge, and since they were able to find gems reasonably quickly in canon, I think they would do the same in this timeline. And yes, even though Jake has toy tools due to Yul's disadvantage, if the high-class Rhea can brute force her way towards getting 10 gems using toy tools, Jake should be able to do it too. As for Ashley and Tom, both of them are generally physical competitors, so I think they would be able to find gems just as quickly as the other two pairs. So, I think it's safe to assume that they're all tied heading into the section where Emily releases the scorpions on them. This leads them to the tunnel which eventually starts caving in due to the scorpions. Now, since Ashley and the newly reformed Ali and Jake are probably too morally sound to leave anyone in the cave, if one duo manages to make it out of the tunnel before the rocks start falling, just like Rhea and Yul did in canon, I think that duo would want to go back and save the others. So no matter which duo gets out first, I think they go back and save the others. They then get attacked by scorpions, Trevor and Derek save them, and then Emily gets attacked by the scorpions, just like in canon, leaving the 3 duos to reach the final climb to the surface. By this point, who actually wins? Normally, I would look at everyone's running speeds to figure out who runs past the finish line first. However, this is one spot where I'll incorporate some creative liberty. During the challenge, Jake would try to apologize to Tom and Ashley, wanting to make amends. However, with Jake's reputation preceding him, and with Ashley's main focus being her desire to win money for her family, Tom and Ashley ignore Jake, not wanting him to mess up their games again. Jake would obviously be disappointed by this, and this is when Ali walks up to Jake and reminds him that actions speak louder than words. So imagine this scenario. Jake and Yul run out of the cave, being in the lead. Yul loudly declares to Jake that this is their chance to make everyone else pay for standing in their way. Knowing that the other campers haven't hurt Yul in the way that he thinks they have, Jake would realize that siding with Yul would be falling back into the same mindset that he spent the majority of the game with, and that this was his chance to make things right. After looking back and seeing that Ashley and Tom were somehow in 3rd place, Jake would stop short of the finish line, and shout for Ashley to run faster and cross the finish line. Ashley and Tom would hear this and speed up, while Yul would freak out and try to pull Jake over the line forcefully. However, Jake would hold his own, allowing Ashley and Tom to cross the finish line with Alec and Ali, thereby eliminating Yul from the game. While Yul would go into an infuriated tirade about how everyone at camp sucks, Jake would go up to Ashley and Tom and once again apologize for his actions, acknowledge that he hasn't been the best to them, and that he hopes they can see that he's genuinely remorseful and that he wants to make things right. Seeing how Jake directly helped Ashley advance to the final 2, Ashley would thank Jake and express her gratitude that he's finally seen the light. Thus, this episode ends by wrapping up 2 plotlines. Will finally gets his brutal comeuppance for his poor behavior throughout the season, and Jake manages to repair one of the bridges that he somewhat burned during the game. And this also sends both Ashley and Alec to the finale, which I think is sort of poetic, since Ashley was largely seen as the leader of the heroes coalition, while Alec was widely seen as the leader of the villains, setting up a leader versus leader finale. Before we get to the final challenge, I want to include one pre-challenge event. This would be a short conversation between Tom and Jake. Now that Jake has done an action that shows how he cares about other people and that he's remorseful for his previous behavior, Tom is willing to open up to Jake and explain why he ignored him for 2 years. This allows the two of them to actually communicate their problems, which allows them both to recognize that they both have made mistakes due to their own fears and trauma, and that they both genuinely care about each other. They wouldn't immediately agree to start dating, but I think they would both agree that they want to stay close to each other and absolutely remain in contact as they work on rebuilding their lost bond. Yes, this essentially puts them back at the same place that they were in the Season 1 finale, but let's be honest, I think a lot of us hoped after the Season 1 finale that they would continue to talk and grow with each other's support, and we didn't get that, so being back at square one is probably for best. Now we can spend Season 1 of Tom Jake showing the two of them slowly becoming closer and eventually dating again. And with that done, let's head to the challenge. With Yul out of the game, I think he joins Alec's supporters since Alec was his ally for a long time, and Jake easily joins Ashley's supporters. I also think Ali defects to Ashley now that the first challenge is over. This is where Ashley and Alec now get to pick their 2 helpers for part 1 of the final challenge. For Ashley, she has 10 people to choose from, and I'm inclined to think that she picks Tom and Tess, considering that Tom is physically strong and Ashley was very close with Tess during the endgame, so she probably trusts her more than Ali and Jake, who she only recently rebuilt a bond with. As for Alec, he still has 6 people to choose from, and I think he picks Rhea and Yul. Not just because he probably trusts them the most, but also because he knows that the two of them are unequivocally fueled by revenge, so Alec would probably hope to use their motivations to his advantage. And while the challenge takes place, this allows Jake to talk to James and Aiden and apologize to them for his behavior. While they would rightfully be hesitant to listen to Jake due to his repeated mistakes, after Jake admits that he still has a long way to go and that he just wants them to know that he absolutely overstepped with his actions, James and Aiden can agree to at least let go of their hatred of him, but that they're far away from being friends. It may not make Jake the most happy, but I think it's a realistic conclusion for Jake's efforts in this season. The important thing isn't for him to repair every single bond as soon as possible. The important thing is that Jake acknowledges that he's made mistakes, that he still needs to work on his relationships with others, and understands that others have the right to keep their distance from him while he shows that he's genuinely changed, which I think is a good message to send. People won't always forgive you right away, and the best that you can do is continue to show that you've changed for the better. Now we go into part 1 of the challenge, where the winner gets some upgrades for the final part of the challenge. Once again, since the canon teams were relatively even in terms of strength, I'm going to compare these new teams to the teams from canon. Now, comparing Alec's current team to Rhea's canon team, the only difference is that Yul is here instead of Ellie, and I'm willing to bet that Yul is at least slightly stronger than Ellie, so Alec's team as a whole is physically stronger than Rhea's canon team. When we compare Ashley's current team to Jake's canon team, Tom is present on both, meaning that we have to compare Ashley and Tess to Jake and Ali. And with this comparison, Ali and Tess are probably relatively even in terms of strength, with maybe Ali having a marginal edge on Tess, while Ashley is undoubtedly stronger than Jake. So, Ashley's team is also stronger than Jake's canon team. Therefore, both Ashley and Alec's teams are stronger than the canon teams, so I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that if they're both stronger than the canon teams, then these two current teams are probably relatively even in terms of strength. Meaning that this challenge probably comes down to Kristal releasing the tiger again, just like in canon. And if I have to make the call here, I think the camper that's most likely to be immediately distracted by the tiger is Yul, since he would probably be so worried that the tiger would mess up his face. So while Yul runs away and is distracted, Ashley's team can use their numerical advantage to win. Ashley would overpower Rhea, while Tom physically distracts Alec, which he's been able to do in canon. This allows Tess to lead the archers to Alec, and with Alec forced to keep his attention on Tom due to their physical altercation, he can't run away, causing him to be hit by the arrows, allowing Ashley to win the upgraded armor and weapons. Now we head to the final section of the challenge. Since this is a physical fight, it's important to consider how strong each finalist is. Ashley is a farm girl, so she must have some natural strength from her daily activities. And all things considered, Ashley has shown that she can be a physical presence in challenges. She was the one responsible for pushing the heavy balls down the hill in episode 7 of season 3, and she did win her matchup in the dueling challenge in episode 4 of season 1. Although that was when she was against Dan, so the competition wasn't too tough. And outside of challenges, she's shown that she can do other physical stuff like climb trees, so that also shows her reasonable amount of strength. As for Alec, I think the biggest argument in Alec's favor is that he's been shown to be able to hold his own against someone like Tom on several occasions. He managed to take down Tom so Rhea could run away with the flag in episode 12 of season 3, he managed to hold off Tom in episode 19 of season 3, and he did manage to tackle Tom in episode 4 of season 1. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because we've seen Tom win a physical exchange with Ashley back in episode 1 of season 1. So if Tom can beat Ashley, and Alec can beat Tom, it's not unreasonable to believe that Alec would beat Ashley. However, there are some asterisks with Alec's physical performances. With episode 12 of season 3, Tom was able to push Alec and Rhea off of him, and Alec did kick Tom in the kiwis, so we could argue that Tom was a bit hindered by that cheap shot. For episode 19 of season 3, Tom wasn't looking at Alec when he pounced on him, so the argument could be made that Tom could have stopped Alec if he was paying attention to him. And for episode 4 of season 1, Alec tackled Tom when he wasn't paying attention, and Tom ended up getting the better of him in that exchange anyways, so it's not definitive if Alec is stronger than Tom, especially since Tom has the training of a spy. And when we include the fact that Alec dropped out of the strength challenge with only one set of weights on his pole, I just don't think he's as strong as he seems. All of this considered, I'm not convinced that either camper is stronger than the other. I thought Ashley would have more moments that showed her physical capabilities, while Alec's performances have too many question marks on them. I think it's reasonably even between them, and even if you give Alec the advantage because of his ability to at least hold back Tom, I think Ashley's armor and weapon upgrade would balance it out. So at this point, I think it's anybody's game. But of course, I have to pick a winner. And because it seems to be so even between them, I think I have to go with what I think is better for the story. And while I do think that both are deserving, both from a gameplay standpoint and a need for the money standpoint, I think the ending would feel better if Alec loses this final battle to Ashley. Ultimately, Alec is by default the villain, and with Rhea and Yul as his helpers, I don't think it would feel good to see the two of them walk away with money. Conversely, Ashley is the hero of this story, and after going through an entire season of Jake not listening to her, Ali not listening to her, her allies dropping out one by one, and stressing over not being able to win money for her family, Ashley is finally able to play her own game, win it all, and finally earn some money that she can use to save her family's farm. And as far as motivations go, I don't think there's anything more wholesome than winning money for the people that you love. So congratulations Ashley, you deserve the world. So we have our answer. If there's no two-team elimination ceremony in episode 9 season 3, Jake takes out Aiden before getting eliminated himself. Rhea manipulates Ali into turning against her alliance on multiple occasions. Ashley and Tess get fed up with being taken advantage of and start playing their own game, and Ashley goes on to win the season. I think this is a decent ending to the season, although I still have some question marks about the writing. And I know that I'm technically the one that wrote the new timeline in this scenario, but I think every writer is their own worst critic, and I think there's room for critiques in this story. I'm happy with Ashley getting the victory that she deserves, Jake getting his comeuppance yet still learning from his mistakes, Ali getting her comeuppance and learning from her mistakes, and Tess having a slightly bigger role in the game rather than being just a support character. But outside of that, I think there's still room for improvement. Is Connor's minor victory over Rhea enough to close that chapter of his story? Is it okay for Jake and Tom to be back where they were in the season 1 finale rather than be further along in their relationship? Did I provide poor justification in keeping Yul long past Gret's elimination? And did I give Ashley and Tess enough of a story to move them far enough beyond being just support characters? I think I could have done better, but feel free to comment your thoughts on this down below. And that about does it for this video. What do you think of my theory? Do you agree with my thought process? Do you disagree? Did I miss something big that would impact the entire video? Either way, please let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like the video, click subscribe if you really like the video, and for some ending words of wisdom. Yelling might not be the nicest thing in the world, but when you're surrounded by people who refuse to listen to your correct advice, yelling might be the only option you have. And there's no shame in that as long as you use it at the right time. Thank you, and farewell.